Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Mary Matte. Thanks so much for being here. Our website, as always, is usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show and get bonus content. This week, we're doing something a little different. It's a shorter version of the show, but still two great interviews. We're not doing the 4 basic food groups. We're focusing on Israel's latest massacres in Gaza with 2 great guests, starting with Diana Buttu.
And Diana Buttu is a lawyer and analyst based in Haifa. She's Palestinian, grew up in Canada, and as always has just amazing insights into what's happening on the ground. And so we're really honored to be speaking to her again. And then after we speak to Diana Buttu, we are really thrilled. I was able to do an interview with Abu Bakr Abed, who is a Gaza-based journalist who is really interested in sports journalism, in football journalism, but because he lives in a war zone, he's become a wartime correspondent. And so grateful that he was able to make the time to talk to me and join us on this show. Although we don't have a Thursday Throwdown for you this week, we do have a Saturday Shit Show for subscribers. So again, you can go to usefulidiotspodcast.com to get the Saturday Shit Show, which is your weekend dose of media madness. So before we speak to Diana, I think it's important to set some context for what exactly is happening with the shattering of the ceasefire. A lot of the media is presenting this as something that either Hamas is responsible for, or that Israel and Hamas are both responsible for. The truth is, though, it really is not nuanced. It's not subtle. It's not shades of gray. It's very black and white. The ceasefire was shattered by Israel alone. And you don't have to listen to me or Aaron when we say that. You can listen to Israeli journalist Barak Ravid, who was not just a journalist based in the States, who's Israeli, but he also was in the IDF. He worked as an intelligence officer. And here's what he said. The ceasefire did not collapse. It was collapsed by the Israeli government. The Israeli government never intended to fully implement the ceasefire agreement signed 2 months ago. It violated one of its key provisions, reneged on it, and tried to force an alternative arrangement on Hamas.
All right. And with that context, let's go to our interview with Diana Buttu.
Welcome back to the show, Diana Buttu.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Wanted to know your opinion of even the framing of the breaking of the ceasefire, the shattering of the ceasefire. How much was there in the first place a ceasefire?
Israel was doing the firing and everybody else was doing the ceasing. There really wasn't a ceasefire, because if you look at what was agreed to, there was supposed to be a few things. It wasn't just the one side of the releasing the Israeli captives in exchange for releasing Palestinian hostages. There was much more to it. It included everything from making sure that humanitarian aid was going to get in, to also Israel withdrawing from the Gaza Strip. And so the aid was just simply not coming in, even from the first day. The first couple of days, there were more trucks that were coming in than had been previous, but then it completely died down. And when it came to the withdrawal, Israel was simply not doing it. Plus, you had all of the attacks that Israel was still carrying out, particularly in the north and in the south, as well as everything that it was doing in the West Bank. So there certainly wasn't a ceasefire in the way that it was laid out and that's supposed to be carried out. There was certainly a less, but definitely not a ceasefire in any way, shape, or form.
I wanted to get your response to some of the threats that Israel has directed at the people of Gaza as it carries out a new massacre of hundreds of civilians so far and counting. Israel Katz, the defense minister, released a video saying in part, soon the evacuation of the population from combat zones will resume, and what follows will be far more severe. You will pay the full price. Return the hostages and remove Hamas. The alternative is total devastation. So basically threatening not only collective punishment against the people of Gaza, but outright ethnic cleansing. And then you had these flyers that were just dropped on the people of Gaza by Israel, translated by Musab Abu Toha, the Palestinian poet. And let's read what this flyer said
who we've had on the show. It was great.
To the people of Gaza, after what happened and the end of the temporary ceasefire, and before we start Trump's compulsory plan, which we will proceed with whether you like it or not, this is the last call for anyone who may share information with us in return for financial support. Reconsider this. The world map will not change if Gaza's people disappear. No one will notice you. No one will ask about you. Neither America nor Europe cares about Gaza. Even the Arab states. They are our allies. They provide us with money, oil, and arms. They only send you shrouds. The game will end soon. And again, that's quoting from a flyer carrying the logo, I believe, of the Shin Bet that was dropped on the people of Gaza by Israeli warplanes. What do you make of this?
You know, Aaron, one of the things that when we're talking about genocide, you know, people always look when talking about genocide about how there needs to be intent and you really need to show intent. And the hardest thing in genocide cases is to show intent. The Israelis aren't even making it a secret any longer. You know, they haven't made it a secret for the past 15 months, but now it's completely not a secret, where you have somebody like Israel Katz, the Minister of Defense, openly saying, we're going to commit war crimes. He's falling just a little bit shy of saying we're going to carry out genocide. And then you have these flyers, which is this form of psychological terror, telling people that they're supposed to flee God only knows where. Because as you know, they've already bombed 90% of the structures in Gaza. There is nothing left. There is nothing left. They've not allowed in food supplies or fuel supplies, electricity, water. People are dying from starvation. The doctors are reporting high levels of malnutrition. And yet you've got these people who seem to be completely oblivious to what it is that is demanded by the world. And the reason that they're oblivious is because nobody's forced them to do anything otherwise. So it becomes okay for them to drop these flyers, and it becomes okay for Israel Katz to send a message, in Hebrew, by the way, to the people of Gaza. And the rest of the world just somehow ignores it. They just ignore it. One of the things that's been so disturbing about all of this is that in the past 48 hours, Israel's killed over 700 people, including 200 children. This is the highest death toll for as long as I can remember. And they're getting away with it. And nobody's doing anything. Nobody's doing anything. Not the Americans, other than supplying the weapons. The Europeans are doing nothing. Nobody's doing anything. It's like we're just waiting for Israel to, quote unquote, finish the job, exactly what Trump told Netanyahu to do.
It seems like the only people doing anything are the people of Yemen.
Yes, that's it. Just Yemen.
And then you have the people are protesting, right? There, as always, there's a big contrast between the elites and the people on the ground. So, you know, most people on the ground, especially in the global South, support Palestine. But in terms of governmental support, I mean, what's so scary and disgusting about that statement is to the extent that Israel's talking in that flyer about governments, they're kind of right.
They are right. That's the problem, is that they are right. I clearly separate between people and governments, but in a weird way, they are right, because what the Israelis have seen and what the state of Israel has seen is that there has been this support for them. We haven't seen any of the pushback against Netanyahu or otherwise. Even just the past 24 hours, Israel bombed a UN, not a compound, like a place where the UN members were housed. This isn't the first time that they bombed a UN facility. It's not going to be the last time that they bomb a UN facility. And it's always the same. Oops, sorry. Oh, we had no idea. But they're doing it on purpose because they can, because they're sending a message to the UN that we're the ones who are in control, not you. Don't even dare think that you have any way of stopping us or any control over us. And so we don't like you. And because we don't like you, you're now an official target. And this is where, Katie, when you see how the past 15 months have played out, where Israel gets to just one notch up and yet another notch up and yet another notch up. Anybody who criticizes becomes in the camp of against us, and therefore they are legitimate targets. So when you look and see now that they're looking at children, the killing of 200 children, and say, well, yeah, it had to happen because one day they're going to grow up and be Hamas. This is what happens when you have power that is unchecked. Unchecked power leads to this.
And you still have people bragging, in quotes, that Israel sends notices. Not everyone does that. They drop flyers. Or another refrain that you'll hear is, well, why isn't Hamas just release the hostages? It's so easy. Why don't they just do that?
The problem, of course, Katie, is that they're putting things like they're flipping it the other way around, which is that rather than placing blame on Palestinians, they should be placing blame on the country that's committing genocide. So rather than saying, oh, yeah, it's just up to Hamas to stop, well, why is it that Israel gets a pass at committing genocide? Why is it that Israel gets to get away with it? When we're looking at the numbers of people who Israel's killed, it's the official numbers, something like 49,000. But that's only the people that we know who've been buried. That doesn't include the people who are still trapped under rubble, and the thousands who are dying because they can't get proper medical treatment, and so on. And instead of people focusing on that, the focus becomes on the lives of Israelis as though their lives are just so much more superior and so much more valuable. And this is where the problem is that when we get into this perverse situation where the lives of some are worth so much more than the tens of thousands who've been killed and the tens of thousands who will die as a result of this genocide. Yeah, we're in a perverse world. It's a very perverse world. So I don't care for the flyers. I really don't care for the flyers. The flyers aren't doing anything other than inflicting psychological terror, because that's what they're designed to do. But I think rather than people blaming those who are living under the bombs, we should be blaming those who are dropping the bombs. And that's Israel.
In a world where it seems like we're constantly being listened to by our phones, our computers, security systems, and Alexas, it sometimes feels pointless to even hope for privacy anymore. Amazon, Meta, and Apple are all using your data to sell you ads. But what if we told you something else was listening to you in a much more nefarious way, using your data to sell you to third parties and governments? You may have already guessed what it is: AI. Think about what we tell these AI platforms: our thoughts, dreams, sensitive questions, business ideas, and more. They take all this information, tie it to your identity, and then sell it. ChatGPT literally has the former director of the NSA sitting on their board right now. Here's an alternative we actually trust. Today's sponsor, Venice.ai. Venice.ai is a generative AI platform that is private and permissionless. Here's how they do it. They utilize leading open source AI models to deliver text, code, and image generation to your web browser. There's no downloads, no installations of anything. Messages are encrypted, and your conversation history is stored only in your browser. And check out their Pro plan, which gives you access to PDF uploads for summaries or insights, plus high image limits and limitless text. If you want to use AI without fear of handing over your most intimate thoughts to a corporation or the government, you can get 20% off a Pro plan using our link, venice.ai/useful, and code USEFUL. Click the link in the description to get started. Let's talk about the state of the ceasefire talks. Just over a week before Israel resumed its bombardment of Gaza on this massive scale, you had Trump's hostage envoy, Adam Buller, who had met directly with Hamas officials and reported serious progress. This is some of what he told CNN.
Could see something like a long-term truce where we forgive prisoners, where Hamas lays down their arms, where they agree they're not part of the political party going forward. I think that's a reality. It's real close.
So he talked about the possibility of not only a full hostage release, but a long-term truce. And that was based on his conversations with Hamas. He also said in the same interview that the Hamas officials he met with are nice guys. And he pointed out that despite Israeli anger over his talks with Hamas, that the U.S. is not an agent of Israel. And what happened? Well, Israel and the Israel lobby voiced their outrage, and within a few days, Trump had fired Adam Boehler as his hostage envoy. And then we had Netanyahu resume the full-scale bombardment, carpet bombing of Gaza. Now, Bassem Naim, who is a top Hamas official, recently gave an interview to CNN, and I want to play some of his comments on the state of these talks, echoing what Adam Boehler said about how close they were to an agreement.
A few days before the last brutal aggression against our people in the Gaza Strip, a new American proposal from Mr. Witkoff through the mediators talking about a bridging proposal to release some prisoners in exchange for returning back to the conditions of the first phase, which means temporary ceasefire, opening the borders, allowing the humanitarian aid to get in, and the second, to engage in the negotiations of the second phase. We were up to the last hour before the aggression, we were engaged in these negotiations, and we were near to make a breakthrough in that case. Unfortunately, Netanyahu, for his internal political calculations to get the right radical groups behind him, supporting him in the budget affair, he decided to go the other way to launch the war against Gazans. Now, during the last 2 days, despite of this brutal aggression, the contacts with the mediators and through them with the Americans continue to.
So what do you make of what happened here, Diana, behind the scenes? You had Trump's hostage envoy reporting key progress, confident not only in an immediate hostage deal, but a long-term truce. Then Steve Witkoff, Trump's envoy, came out and gave an interview where he said that Hamas was making unacceptable demands, which he wouldn't specify what they were. Then Israel launches these massive bombardments. Now you have a Hamas official saying that they were very, very close to a deal, and he's actually still hopeful that one could still possibly be reached. So what do you think happened behind the scenes here in Netanyahu's decision to blow up the ceasefire deal?
I think a few things happened. So first, I think that when the first ceasefire was signed, it was signed as a kind of a pause so that Trump could take office and that there could be some sort of calm. And then I think what happened was Netanyahu then flew to the United States. When he flew to the United States, I think that he then started making demands and telling President Trump that they need to have all of the Israeli captives all at once. And that's why you started to see that Trump started repeating the same refrain, all of them, not one, not two, not three, but all of them, all at the same time. And so Netanyahu wanted to renegotiate that three-phase agreement and turn it into just a one-phase agreement, meaning that just release the Israelis and that's the end of it. And so when the Israelis learned that there were these negotiations that were happening directly between the Israelis, between Hamas and between the United States, I think it got them very upset. Plus, add to that you have, in a couple of weeks' time, the Israeli budget needs to be passed. Every Israeli cabinet, the only way they ever collapse inside the country is if the budget doesn't get passed. And given that Itamar Ben-Gvir had already pulled out of the coalition back in January when the first ceasefire agreement was signed, Netanyahu needed to come up with a way to bring him back into the fray in order to be able to pass that budget, in order to remain in office. It's not at all, I think, coincidental that the day that he was bombing Gaza was the same day that he was scheduled to appear for his corruption trial. So in sum total, what I think happened was that Netanyahu was definitely not happy with the three-phase ceasefire agreement. And he did everything in his power to try to thwart it. And here you have a US president who really can't really seem to keep it together, who's not really focused on anything, and is willing to go along with whatever it is that Netanyahu wants. So My fear now is that this is going to be the new reality, that Netanyahu's been given a green light to continue to forge ahead, to continue to bomb Gaza. There are no breaks. There's nobody who's pushing Israel to stop. Internationally, I'm talking diplomatically. And so he's going to continue. He's going to continue on ahead with implementing what he wants to do. And the amazing thing is that he's transformed Netanyahu has transformed his own plan into now being one that's called the Trump plan. And that's the ethnic cleansing of Gaza and genocide. I think this was all very calculated and unfortunately not at all surprising.
By the way, just to clarify, when I was talking about people being grateful for the flyers, that's the best you can say about those people is that they're ignorant. The worst is that they're just liars and genocidal. But, telling people to evacuate when, as you pointed out, Diana, there's literally no place to evacuate is not actually good praxis. It's not actually good practicing of international humanitarian law.
No, not at all. No, not at all. If they're going to evacuate, they have to make sure that there's a safe way to evacuate, a place to evacuate to, where there's going to be all of the things that are needed, like health, care, education, service, etc. What they're telling people to do is just flee, just run away, just go anywhere. And these are the areas that we intend on hitting. And, if we miss a couple of spots, it's all right. We go in the so-called safe areas, then that's okay too. So no, it's totally not according to law. And I didn't interpret your remarks as being something that you agreed with.
Yeah. I mean, we've interviewed Francesca Albanese, we've interviewed you, we've interviewed Craig McIver. All of you are human rights lawyers. Does international humanitarian law, do human rights laws, do international laws at all exist anymore? I mean, are they dead? Is this a new era, or is it just more apparent than it has been in the past?
I think it remains to be seen. I refuse to buy into a system that says that Israel can do whatever it wants. And at the same time, I see that this system of this international system has failed Palestinians. But then I look back and I think, well, it also failed other peoples around the world as well. It failed South Africa for quite some time. It failed Algeria. It failed all of these people who had been struggling for their rights. Eventually it does catch up. The problem is that it's how long before it eventually catches up. And the real issue here is that you can look at this world and say might equals right, because that's the way that it's been played out. Or you can say, actually, these are some tools that we have that will give us leverage. It might not be immediate, but at least it gives us a little bit of a longer term leverage. I just really wish that, especially all of those European countries who I've spent so many years living in Palestine, who've preached to me about the necessity for human rights, the necessity for women's rights, the necessity for children's rights, and the necessity for all of these, this global system. I kind of want to hold up a mirror to them and say, and now what? Now what are you doing about it?
I read about a debate that you had where someone basically asked you to condemn Hamas for being anti-woman, anti-gay, and your response was like, "Are you going to condemn Israel?"
And this is the problem, is that it always gets into this like logic that somehow it's a question of the oppressed condemning.
Right.
It was like we're expected to be perfect in resisting this onslaught, in resisting genocide, in resisting our ethnic cleansing. And if you're not perfect, then somehow you're not worthy of anything. You're not worthy of right. You're not worthy of being alive. This is the perverse system that has been created, that Israel can do no wrong, and Palestinians can do no right. And we have to be the ultimate, we have to be ultra perfect in order for people to look and say, yes, they do have a right to live. Yes, they do have a right to live freely. And when you go down that path, it's frightening.
Yeah.
It's frightening. It's frightening. It's dehumanizing.
Yeah. Conditional humanity.
Yeah.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. At Useful Idiots, we are extremely proud to have an audience that really cares about helping the world, from bold activism to staying informed to supporting independent media. The support you give us and the brave guests we interview is invaluable. You are making a difference in the world. But when it comes to helping the world, our philosophy is that a healthy external life starts with a healthy internal one. Therapy can be helpful to anyone who tries it. You can learn positive coping skills, find new ways to set boundaries, improve relationships with green flags, or even just have someone to talk to. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. That's why we recommend BetterHelp. BetterHelp is fully online, which not only takes away the hassle of travel, but also eases the stress of taking this new step towards a better you. Over 5 million people worldwide use it. Why not you too? Access a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties to find the right person for you and easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/useful today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/useful.
Meanwhile, talk to us about what's happening on the occupied West Bank, where daily Israeli terror and land theft continues as well.
I'm so glad you asked this question because a lot of people have been ignoring it. Back in October of 2024, the Israelis passed 2 pieces of legislation in relation to UNRWA. And the first law bans UNRWA from operating within what they call Israeli sovereign territory, which they've never defined. And then the second one says that there should be no coordination between UNRWA and between Israeli officials. And when those 2 laws came out, you had to read between the lines. Reading between the lines, it made it clear that what Israel's trying to do is get rid of Palestinian refugees and get rid of UNRWA completely. And that's why since January of this year, what the Israelis have been doing is systematically going after each and every refugee camp in the West Bank. They've displaced 40,000 Palestinians. They've attacked schools. They're starting slowly doing to the West Bank what they had done in the Gaza Strip, but systematically going after first the refugee camps in order to try to get rid of this idea that there are Palestinian refugees. And then also all of the infrastructure that's there as well. They've killed hundreds. And so you've got the army on the one hand, and then you have the settlers on the other hand, who have also been going after Palestinians, who've been terrorizing Palestinians. And I was just in Ramallah a few days ago. There are now 900 checkpoints in the West Bank, which means that you really cannot drive more than 15 to 20 kilometers before you're confronted by an Israeli checkpoint. And for those who have never been at an Israeli checkpoint, it's not just a question of like a stop sign and then go. These are armed checkpoints where you have soldiers who will harm people. They will kill people. They will confiscate your car. They will arrest you, all sorts of things. And so what the Israelis have done is they've made it so that it's not just the turning the West Bank, doing to the West Bank what they've done to Gaza, but inflicting a slow death by 1,000 cuts system where they want people to leave. I mean, where do you go when 40,000 people, where do 40,000 people go in the West Bank? Where do they go? Yes, their families can take them in, but there isn't enough space. They can take them in for a temporary period, but then there's not enough space. And so the aim is to just eventually get these people to leave, because that's exactly what Israel wants. Ethnic cleansing.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the prospects of Palestine coming under some sort of unified Palestinian leadership. Israel's succeeded not only in separating Gaza and the West Bank geographically, totally cut off from each other, now much of Gaza is destroyed, but also politically, with these two competing factions, Hamas in Gaza and Fatah in the West Bank. And you have one of the few Palestinian leaders who might be able to possibly unite all factions, Marwan Barghouti, still imprisoned by Israel. He was at the top of the list of prisoners who Hamas, even though he's not even a member of Hamas, wanted freed. But it seems that Israel won't let him go precisely because he seems like one of the few leaders who could unite the Palestinian factions. What are your thoughts on the prospects of this being overcome, of there one day possibly being a unified Palestinian leadership? And, do you think that can make a difference in the Palestinian struggle for freedom? Or is at this point just, it doesn't matter what the Palestinians do, this occupier will always be the way it's going to be?
So I'm first going to talk about Marwan. Marwan you're right, he's a member of Fatah, and there's kind of uniform consensus among the Palestinian political factions and otherwise that he should be the next leader. And it's because of that on the night that the ceasefire agreement was signed, that it was reached, that Netanyahu took to the airwaves and said, "Don't worry, Israelis, we're still holding significant assets." That was his exact quote. "We're still holding significant assets." And what he meant is, we're not going to release Marwan Barghouti, not anytime soon. And the why is because he doesn't want to see a unified Palestinian leadership. Now, I have to say, Palestinians are unified. There isn't a single Palestinian out there that I know of that wants to live under Israeli military rule, that wants to live under a system of genocide and ethnic cleansing, that wants to be living with the settlements. Nobody. I don't know anybody who wants that. The problem is that hasn't been translated onto the leadership level. And the why is primarily because Abu Mazen gets a lot of benefit from having this division rather than being united. How? He gets to be the person that the world turns to and calls president. He gets to be the person who looks as though he's in charge. He gets to be the person who is getting all of the accolades, and he doesn't have any of the responsibilities. He doesn't have to answer any of the hard questions. He doesn't have to do any leading. And that's why it's not at all surprising that over the course of the past 15 months of genocide, he's largely been absent. He hasn't been saying anything. So will there be a unified Palestinian leadership? I certainly hope so, because the elements are there. Again, I don't see that there are huge rifts or huge distinctions between the political factions, that we all want the same thing. But what's been holding it back has been that the United States, the European Union, and others have put conditions on how it is that the Palestinian Authority should be operating. And those conditions largely focus on whether Hamas can or cannot be part of the government. So it doesn't make sense to me that while the world talks about democracy and the importance of democracy and, all these great things, that they don't want Palestinians to be able to choose who their leaders are. They want to choose our leaders for us. And you have the Israelis who've firmly been saying the same thing as well. So much so that, going back to that quote by Israel Katz, he's literally telling Palestinians, you have to give up your own people because we get to choose your leaders, not you. And that is the ultimate form of control and the denial of self-determination. It's that we should be able to choose our leaders, not them.
Can you reflect on the difference between the policy under Trump and under Biden?
That's a great question. They're both people who support genocide. And one of the things that I think the Trump supporters were saying is he's going to come in with a different approach. It's the exact same as Biden. The exact same approach as Biden. Give Israel weapons, give Israel political support, and let Israel bomb Gaza. Let Israel do whatever it wants to do. So it seems to be copy-paste from the previous administration. The only difference I see is that Trump seems to be much more bold about it. He seems to be much more out in the open about it. And there isn't any restraint that's been placed on him that may have been placed on the Biden administration, whether that's within the administration or people who are supportive of the Democratic Party. The policies are exactly the same. My fear, though, is that while the policies are the same and while many were expecting different policies, my fear is that because Trump is so unpredictable, to put it nicely, that the world is scrambling to run away from him. Nobody wants to confront him. Nobody wants to push him or to do anything against him. Whereas there was a little bit more pushback against Biden. And so my fear is that he's going to let this continue for as long as he wants this to continue, for as long as Netanyahu wants this to continue. And the fact that Palestinians not only are paying the price for Netanyahu's criminal acts, but the fact that Palestinians we're now, waiting to see if there's any level if there's an off switch when it comes to a man who's made it clear that he supports genocide and has enacted policies to support genocide.
And of course, Netanyahu has incentive to keep this going, right? I mean, just as an example, the other day they canceled a hearing that he was supposed to attend over his own corruption.
Yes. So I don't think that it was at all coincidental that the night that he bombed Gaza, the next morning, he was supposed to have his corruption trial. I don't think that was at all coincidental. I don't think that it's at all coincidental that he started bombing Gaza in the lead up to the Knesset vote in relation to the budget, because if the budget falls, if the budget does not pass, it's a parliamentary system, the government collapses. So I don't think that it's at all coincidental. And I don't think that it's at all coincidental that the minute that he started bombing Gaza with just the ferocity of it, that we then saw convicted terrorist Itamar Ben-Gvir come back into the government to give Netanyahu the padding that he needs in his coalition to be able to pass even more legislation.
When it comes to the differences between Biden and Trump, when it comes to protesters in the U.S., Biden smeared them as anti-Semites and completely disparaged them, whereas Trump is not only doing that, but also now persecuting people, including Mahmoud Khalil and others, marking them for deportation. Watching this as a lawyer, as a Palestinian from the outside, where basically free speech on Palestine is becoming criminalized, not only in the U.S., but throughout the so-called Western world. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it was ever not criminalized. I don't think that it was ever free when it came to Palestine. Judging by the number of people who have lost their jobs or the people who the Zionists have gone after, I don't think that it's ever been the case that Palestinians can speak freely and Palestine supporters can speak freely, and that those who are condemning Israel and Israel's policies can speak freely. I've never seen that. The difference this time is that I think that when Trump got into office, he got a significant amount of support from the Zionist lobby, and they made it clear where their priorities are. Their priorities are to crack down on university campuses. Their priorities are to make sure that people are afraid to speak out. Their priorities are to make sure that laws are changed so that only people who are okay with Israel are allowed to enter the country or to get jobs or what have you. That was their goal from a long time ago. This is through Project Esther, et cetera. And so I think that was really the top of their checklist. Then if you go down the checklist, remember that during the first Trump administration, this was a president that virtually ticked off every item off of Netanyahu's wish list, whether that wish list included recognizing the settlements, moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, closing down the consulate that was in East Jerusalem, to stopping funds to the Palestinian Authority, to trying to shut down UNRWA. This was the president who gave everything to Netanyahu. And this time around, Netanyahu has a second checklist that includes cracking down on students and making sure that any speech against Israel is criminalized. and normalized. That the criminalization of speech is normalized.
Can you talk about your role during the negotiations during the Second Intifada, and what insights you learned from that apply to what's happening right now?
To give it kind of a brief overview, because it was years. Negotiating with the Israelis was a process of negotiating and then renegotiating and then renegotiating and then renegotiating. Exactly what we're seeing happen today. So there was nothing was agreed until everything was agreed. And even when everything was agreed, nothing was agreed. So that was the way that they were constantly behaving, that yes, there's an agreement. Yes, we signed an agreement. Oh no, but now we need to renegotiate the signed agreement. And then we need to renegotiate the renegotiated signed agreement, and so on and so on and so on. It was a constant, it was like the hamster wheel. But not only was that part of the problem, but it was always a question of power, that the Israelis knew how to exert their power against Palestinians and demand concessions by using violence. So it's not at all surprising that Netanyahu just yesterday, a day before yesterday, said, from now on, negotiations are going to be held under fire. That was his exact quote. Because that's the way that they behaved when we were negotiating many years ago. It's the same way. We're going to force you to negotiate under fire. So I used to say that it was like negotiating with a gun to your head, because it was. It really was. The problem here is that we're the only people in the world who have to negotiate with our oppressor and occupier. It just doesn't exist in any other context. In other contexts around the world, there's a framework, and that framework needs to be followed, but being international law. Here, it's whatever Israel wants, and what they're looking for Palestinians to do is to just submit. Just accept whatever dictates we're handing to you, and then life will be good. But life is never good when you accept their dictates. It's just demanding more and more and more and more. So what they're doing now is not only renegotiating what they've already agreed to, they're also negotiating under fire. And they're demanding that these total submission from Palestinians. And then that total submission is then going to lead to even more demands. So it's just this, as I said, is constant hamster, the hamster wheel that you're always running on, always running on, always running on. And it's because they can get away with it. They can get away with it. And they really want to be able to, they want Palestinians to accept ethnic cleansing, accept genocide, accept that we've been erased, and be happy about it. And be happy about it. And be grateful too.
I mean, another word for what Israel's doing is lying, right? I mean, in addition to dehumanizing them, they're just lying during the negotiations. Like when you renegotiate. Yes. You tweeted out a video that I wanted to have you react to. It's very disgusting. It's of Netanyahu giving John Fetterman a pager. And of course, that's a reference to the disgusting attacks on the people of Lebanon. That was hailed as like technologically ingenious and showing such technical prowess. But let's just take a look at this video.
Oh, it's like this is a silver-plated beeper. The real beeper is like 1/10 the weight. It's nothing. Really? Yeah, but it changes history.
When that story broke, yeah, and I was like, oh, I love it.
Right, he loved it. I remember him saying that. So he loved this campaign, this beeper campaign, which killed many civilians, including kids, and was somehow hailed
and blinded some.
Yeah.
Killed doctors. Yeah. That's the grotesque part of it, is that it's like war criminals giving each other souvenirs. And remember that Netanyahu also gave a gold-plated one to President Trump, and it's this glorification of it. Now, first it turns into a cute little slogan, and the number of times I've been tweeted at saying, "Did you get your pager?" Others have been. We saw on Mehdi Hassan on CNN. Where it was the same thing, oh, where's your pager? It becomes a joke. And and the reason that they joke about it is because they think that there's some prowess there, like that they're the strong, the ones who can't be defeated. And yet when it's going to boomerang on them, and it will boomerang, then suddenly it's going to be that they're going to be crying about it. And, oh, I can't believe that this is happening to us, etc. But it's that disconnect that they are actually bragging about war crimes. And nobody has the wherewithal to stop them. Nobody says, whoa, what world are we in? That you can brag about this, that you can give these out as gifts, that you are, that you're going after journalists, that you're going after me and others. And, where's your page? Like the fact that they think this is a joke is really sick. It's really sick. And it shows you exactly where the society is at, because for them, they think that these crimes are cute. It's a cute thing. It's cute.
You are based in Haifa. What is the environment like there now? How are people reacting to this? I mean, Haifa is one of the, what do you call it? A mixed city. So what are the responses to what's happening right now?
It's also mixed. Look, the vast majority of people, when I say people, I'm talking about the Jewish Israeli population, because that's the majority in Haifa. The vast majority of Jewish Israelis are falling into two major camps. On the one hand, they don't want this attack to resume in Gaza, not out of love for Palestinians by any stretch of the imagination, but mostly out of a sense that they know that that effectively they didn't win. They didn't achieve the goals that they wanted to achieve. They weren't able to get rid of Hamas. They weren't able to completely return all of the Israeli captives. And so the vast majority of them don't want to return to that. And yet they also fall into the other camp of very much still supporting this genocide. So while they may be opposed to Netanyahu and they may be opposed to going back into attacking Gaza, they are still very much supportive of this genocide. So you see signs all over the place talking about their victory. You see signs all over the place calling upon them to build settlements in the Gaza Strip. You see that all, and you hear it. You hear this speak all the time. But at the same time, they're like the vast majority of Israelis who just simply don't want to go back into Gaza, but at the same time have been very supportive of this genocide. It's crazy. I mean, imagine living in a place where your neighbors are effectively wishing that you would be killed, because that's what it's like here. Like, living in Haifa, I wasn't born here. I wasn't raised here. I moved here. And I say this because none of this should be normalized, but it has been normalized. And this that I'm talking about is, you'll hear Israelis openly talking about ethnic cleansing. You'll hear them openly talking about how Arabs and Palestinians should be wiped off the map. You hear them openly talking about how in 1948 they didn't finish the job. Like, it's just such normal speech here to hear racist, violent speech and to see racist, violent behavior. It's very normal. And so living in Haifa is a game of survival, really, where you're trying to carve out a place and a space, particularly if you've got a family, where you're trying to protect your children from hearing and feeling this racist speech and the violent attacks, and at the same time live in a place that is yours. So it's just a constant day-to-day battle of trying to protect yourself and to try to stay alive in the face of a community that believes that ethnic cleansing is okay, that believes that genocide's okay, and that will not only find it okay, but they're not just, it used to be that they were Nakba deniers or apologists. Now they're cheerleaders. And that's the part that's terrifying.
At least they're honest that it happened, right? I mean, the silver lining is that they're the silver lining of being openly genocidal is that you acknowledge some things that actually happened in history.
Yes, though they think it's correct.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah, you agree on the facts on the ground. It's just that they're have a morally repugnant perspective of it. And they say this stuff in front of you, knowing that you're Palestinian, or?
Yeah, they do. It's become so normal that it's just kind of considered acceptable that you can say these things. Many times they don't know that I'm Palestinian, but it's just considered normal that you can say these things and that you can wear T-shirts that are racist, that you can walk around and say things to women who are wearing hijab. Like it sort of comes with the territory, unfortunately. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time. We know how busy you are. We really appreciate, as always, your time and insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
That was great. It's always so great to hear from Diana. I love talking to her and I love hearing from her.
I share the sentiment.
So now we're going to play the interview that I did with Abu Bakr Abed, who again is a journalist based in Gaza. And people may remember he actually took part in a really moving and infuriating press conference back in January, where he spoke on behalf of a bunch of Gaza-based journalists about what they were experiencing.
You've seen us killed in every possible way. We've been immolated, incinerated, dismembered, and disemboweled. And recently, we've been freezing to death. What more ways should you be seeing us killed in so that you can move and act and stop the hell inflicted upon us? There are no words to describe what we've been going through, because you've seen our bodies, how they've become fragile, skinny, and fatigued. But we never stopped. We never stopped to tell you the truth, to narrate our stories, and to tell you that we are being genocided, to move your dead consciences, to help a population that has seen every sort of torture and tasted every type of death.
Now, without further ado, here's my interview with Abu Bakr Abed. And for understandable reasons, his connection was terrible. So the audio is not great. So we appreciate your patience and your understanding. But obviously, this is something that happens when you're trying to interview someone who's based in Gaza. Welcome to the show, Abu Bakr Abed. So honored to be talking to you. I've seen your appearances. I've read your work, your reporting. I want to start off by saying I'm really so sorry about what is happening right now. What do you want an American audience, or really an audience outside of Gaza, to know about what is happening right now as we speak?
That they are paying for my suffering. That's the first thing I want them to know. And this has to stop, because not even silent, but you are paying by your tax dollars for my suffering for what I'm going through right now. And you've trusted, it was your mistake that you trusted Trump when he deceived you by the leaflets that were saying that he would be very interested in stopping wars. But right now he's breaking out wars, he's starting wars, and he's just a puppet in the for the Israeli lobby, and he's funding the resumption of the genocide, feast of the genocide. So instead of stopping the war in Gaza, stopping this genocide, he is funding it completely, fully, and in every possible way. Secondly, I want Americans to know, particularly the younger generations, and let me just say that I've known many of those people and those young men and women in the younger generations, among the younger generations in the United States. I'm really happy about it. I'm very hopeful that they will make a change. They have to know that instead of having our dreams right now, we're just dreaming to live. That is the peak of dehumanization. That is something we never wanted to happen. And it even didn't start on October 7th, because this has been the same cycle of grief, the same cycle of unending suffering, the same cycle of pain, the same cycle of agony for over 17 years inside Gaza and for many years before that. So I just want people to know in the United States that it's your duty. You are the only nation. So I won't blame any nation around the world as much as I blame the nation of the United States, that they are responsible for the killings and the mass expulsion of Palestinians inside Gaza and what is happening, because it's your government and everything is being given the green light inside the White House. So you have to make the change. You didn't need to rest at all for a single second, because your government is funding my suffering. Your government is behind the killing of my dearest friend. Your government is behind the killing of my neighbors. Your government is behind the annihilation of many homes of Gaza, of my university, of my neighborhood, and everything. That's why you need to stop it. That's why you need to stand firm in the face of this extreme adversity, and you have to share our pain. And it's not only about protesting, and it's not only about boycotting and divesting. You have just to make sure that you face your government, you tackle their decisions that make for our suffering and make for our plight, and you have to just do everything in your power to make sure that your government is not gonna do that again. And the plight of us, the plight of the children here and everyone is going to stop, because our dreams have been destroyed and have been buried under the debris, and our lives have been being shattered every single day. Right now, while I'm talking to you, there is shelling across Gaza, across central Gaza. There are still many live rounds and bullets and volleys of projectiles unleashed by Israeli troops and squadrons distributed all across the Strip. And now there are strong waves of wind that are blowing away the tents of people. That is to tell you, you are now in a home, Kathy. The American people are in homes. They are living the best life, the best lives. They have everything they want, the basic necessities. They can pursue these dreams. All these means of a human life are not found in Gaza, because we have been dehumanized and we are seen as subhumans. People have been intense for the past 15 months. So imagine that you cannot really stay in your home for 24 hours, because you need to go outside, have some food, have some chicken, go shopping, play with your friends, play with your colleagues, have some time outside in a cafe or something. All these simple indicators of life, all these signs of the simplest life in the world, have no place in Gaza, and have had no place in Gaza for more than 15 months. That is something your government has funded. So please, we're not begging you, but it's your duty to stop it.
Of course, I totally agree with that. I had a question for you. So you did a recent collaboration on Drop Site News, and you said after the attacks were underway, the Israeli military posted messages on social media in Arabic ordering Palestinians in areas throughout the Strip to evacuate. Al-Haq, the Palestinian human rights organization from the occupied territories, released a report January this year in which they declared, quote, the intentional use of humanitarian language directly contributes to the false narrative that Israel is taking measures to protect civilians, when in fact it amounts to forced transfer as both a war crime and crime against humanity. Do you agree with this assessment? What's your response to that claim?
It's insane, because Israel has been killing children, mass killing children for the past 15 months now. During the past 48 hours, more than around 200 children have been killed. I know babies under 3 years old who have been killed. I know a fetus who was burnt along with his mother, and Khan Yunis after their tent was bombed by Israeli drones. And I know entire generations, entire families that have been wiped out. Here where I am at the moment in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza, 2 families have been wiped out from the roots, from the youngest child to the oldest man in the family. And I know one of our friends that used to visit us, and he visited us during the war on Gaza. He, his wife, his 2 children, his brothers and his sisters and his parents, all of them have been wiped out in the recent attacks, and they were all killed in Rafah. So where are the measures that protect civilians in Gaza? Where are these measures? And like, for example, I don't have any connection with Hamas. I know, personally speaking, why am I subjected to this horror? Why am I subjected to go through all this at the same time? Why am I subjected to be, for example, to being a football reporter, to a war correspondent? I'm not a war correspondent, and everybody knows that. I'm a football reporter, so why am I not chasing my dreams? Why am I not pursuing what I want? I haven't completed my education. This is a simple dream, and I'm now stuck. I'm just reporting on the killing of my people, on the murder of my people, on their injuries. I'm seeing children dismembered in pieces around me. I'm living quite 100 meters away from Al-Aqsa Mother's Hospital. The morgue of the hospitals, the corpses are piled up there, and people just are crying and weeping over their loved ones before the morgue and inside the hospital itself. And it was a scene of sheer horror, pure terror, something I can never imagine. I still have very, very painful memories from the past when I saw tanks and rockets falling down on my neighborhood and on nearby houses. Those scenes, I haven't recovered from them yet. I haven't recovered from the trauma. I haven't really given myself time to rehabilitate. So just the restart of attacks in Gaza has revoked all these very painful memories and has just terrorized me and it truly, truly traumatized me. So it's a trauma that is coupled with a trauma, and this trauma is being compounded every single day. We cannot really get out of this. This is the plight, the unending plight the Palestinians in Gaza haven't gone back from, haven't really recovered from, and people have allowed it. The world has allowed it. No one's doing something to even help Palestinians. No one in the world, no nation can help enter one bottle of water, a single plate of meat, of food into Gaza. You have to be ashamed. You must be ashamed.
It seems like the only nation that is really doing anything about this is Yemen.
Yeah, I know. But it's not just about Yemen, Kat, because we talk about Yemen. Yemen decided to sacrifice itself for Gaza and Palestine. We're seeing the people in the Arab world themselves, in the Arab world itself, they are attacking Yemen for standing with Gaza. So this kind of division within the Arab world itself and within the world itself is truly, truly, very destructive for the Palestinian cause and very heartbreaking to see as Palestinians. They're being attacked by the Arab world themselves. We're not united. When we talk about Trump, for example, what he did 5 years ago in his first inauguration in 2017, he spearheaded normalization within the Arab world. So he is the reason behind what is happening right now to Gaza. He's the reason why Gaza is just suffering. So I hope that it's not all about Yemen, but it's about other countries, but they're not ready to do so because the United States rules the world. The Treaty Luby rules the United States. So everybody knows and must be, and I'm sure that everybody knows that the Israeli Luby rules the entire world, and that is done under the auspices of the United States.
Was there a ceasefire before? Because the narrative now is, of course, that as of the other night, Israel has broken the ceasefire, but many people point out that they were consistently breaking the ceasefire even during the quote-unquote ceasefire. So what are your thoughts on that?
They have killed 150 during the ceasefire. So what is a ceasefire when 150 people have been killed during the truce? And what is a ceasefire when no humanitarian aid was allowed in, people were suffering and didn't have mobile homes, they didn't have caravans, they didn't have containers to live in temporarily, they didn't have the materials, they didn't have vehicles and bulldozers retrieve the bodies of their loved ones from under the rubble. So what is a ceasefire? What was the ceasefire? What was that ceasefire in place? It's just incredibly insane to say that there was a ceasefire in place for Gazans because many people were killed. 150 people could not even go back to their houses during the ceasefire. So it's absurd. It's completely unreasonable to say that Israel even wanted this ceasefire, because we see right now Israeli troops inside Gaza, and we're seeing the round of shelling, the live rounds, the volleys of projectiles. We're seeing how they are striking everywhere inside Gaza. So it's literally insurmountable.
Can I ask how old you are and what your dreams were before this happened? Like to finish your education, etc.?
When the genocide started, I was 20. Right now, I'm 22, and I started speaking English when I was 14 years old. Although I didn't have even the means, the methods to learn the language, it was very hard to learn it with scant sources and with being totally cut off from the outside world. But I did, because I'm someone with an unbeatable mentality. That was what I was instilled into. I was instilled into hope, and I'm still hopeful every single day. And yeah, I dreamed to be a football commentator, because in 2019 I participated in one of the world football commentary contests in the BBC Cardiff. I was online, and I really went, probably I reached the round before the final round.
Semi-final.
Yeah, not the semi-final really. It's not like this. It wasn't like this, the division of these phases, but one of the highest phases. And I was absolutely I was really happy about it, because I know football. And despite the fact that I'm now a war correspondent, I was the only one, and I'm the only one inside Palestine, not only Gaza, was reporting on the sporting tragedy. And of course, it's absolutely heartbreaking to see the mass destruction of every football facility inside the Strip, the killing of over 380 footballers, more than 750 athletes, and the shattering of dreams of every fan inside the territory. We are still watching football, and everyone is watching the game. But unfortunately, FIFA is complicit. The international footballing organizations are also complicit. They don't care about Palestine. They were crying over Ukraine 3 years ago. But now football, we know, they told us many times, and they caused us headache, that football stands together. But when it comes to Palestine, Palestinians, the Lebanese, the Sudanese, it doesn't stand together. So it's a very white supremacist, racist, and discriminate choosing and picking of whom to stand with and whom to show sympathy with.
How come you have an English accent, like a British accent?
Again, as I'm telling you, I've been watching football for
That's why. Okay, football, yeah.
for 12 years. Yeah, for 12 years. So yeah, I do know much more about the British culture, many things about the British culture. And I even, let me just tell you that I was accepted into many universities, 9 pre-medical schools in the United States, 3 universities in the UK. But Israel and Gaza's conditions did not give me the chance to go outside 3 years ago. So I stayed in the territory.
So you applied to various universities in the States and in England, and you were going to do pre-med?
Yeah,
Wow.
I was going to do pre-med, but unfortunately, Israel and the siege on Gaza, the crippling siege, did not allow me to do so. So I stayed in the territory. I was forced to stay.
You commented earlier about people who were tricked by Trump and his anti-war message. Do you think there's any difference between Trump and Biden?
No, the two are war criminals. They are maniac leaders. They are just serving the interests of the Zionist entity. So there is no difference between the two. And as I just told you that he spearheaded the normalization within the Arab world. So how could he better at all? And I think probably for me, I didn't want him to win. I didn't want Kamala to win either. But I think from what I'm seeing, there is no difference between the two. And the list of the two evil doesn't work here as well. So both are evil. Both have been supporting the genocide in Gaza. And now we've gone from genocide Joe to genocide Trump. That's the transition that we have at the moment. So Trump has been genociding us. Now, Joe Biden has been genociding us. Now Trump is Trump trans. So it's completely devastating. We're gutted. The buildings are gutted. Everyone is gutted, devastated. But we would continue to hope. That's a promise. We will continue to hope until the very last breath, and we will seek out hope, because to seek out hope is to be human. And we will continue that until the very last breath, and we will make sure that Palestine is going to be free. That's the promise for ourselves as young generation. That's a promise we'll carry with us for us and for the young generations and for everyone outside the world, because we're not fighting back against Israel. We're fighting back. We are leading.
We lost our connection there, but very happy that I was able to speak to Abubaker and wish him and all the people in Gaza and in Palestine and in Yemen and in Lebanon, all the places that Israel is attacking, wishing them the best, the very best. It sounds ridiculous to say, but I don't know what to say during these times. And that's it. Wow. So moving, so scary. Obviously, that got cut off at the end because he lost his connection. Not at all surprising. And he's witnessing so much death and destruction and heartache. And my heart just goes out to all of the people in Gaza, all of the people in Palestine, people in the West Bank, the people in Lebanon and in Yemen who Israel, with our support, are killing. And it's just a shameful thing that this is still happening.
The evil and the suffering is just impossible, especially when you're far away from it, to fully comprehend. And
really is,
I'm left pretty speechless these days. Thank you so much for tuning in to Useful Idiots. We really appreciate your support. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for listening to and watching Useful Idiots. For extended episodes, bonus content, and our weekly Thursday Throwdown episode, please subscribe at usefulidiotspodcast.com. Support the show for free by subscribing on YouTube, Rumble, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like the podcast, don't forget to rate and review. You can also follow us on Twitter at UsefulIdiotPod. Thanks for supporting independent media. We'll see you next time.